Good morning. This is the second part of anti-anginal drugs. In the first part, we have discussed about different types of angina and the drugs useful in the management of angina. And we have discussed about two important groups of drugs, which includes nitrates as well as beta blockers. And in this slide, this class, we will discuss about the remaining groups of drugs which are effective in the management of angina. So our first agent is calcium channel blockers. That means the drugs which blocks the calcium channels. Calcium channels means these are the channels for conducting calcium ions which are present mainly in smooth muscle cells and as well as in cardiac myocytes and SA node, AV node, etc. So these agents act by blocking the entry of calcium into the cells. So now we will see how these agents will act, how this agent will block the calcium channel and what are the effects in each cell. We have different agents in calcium channel blockers. So we will classify these agents into three groups. We have dihydropyridine groups, which is the bulkiest group here. So that means we have nifedipine, nicardipine, nitrandipine, amlodipine, felodipine, nimodipine, isradipine. These are the members in dihydropyridine group of calcium channel blockers. And the remaining groups we can collectively call as non-dihydropyridines, but there are actually two important groups. The first one is phenylalkylamines, example is verapamil, and benzothiazepine, which example is diltiazem. So coming to the mechanism of action of these drugs, as I already said, this agent blocks the voltage sensitive calcium channels. The calcium channels can be classified depending upon their mode of operation. So we have different types of calcium channels like voltage operated or voltage sensitive, then leak channels, ligand activated channels. So we concentrate mainly the agent which blocks the voltage sensitive channel, and the voltage sensitive channels are further divided on the basis of different their duration of action, etc. And we have different long acting type, L type, then T type, transient type. We have different agents, but here we discuss only those agents which blocks the L type of voltage sensitive calcium channel. The L type calcium channels are mainly located in cardiac and smooth muscles as well as in cardiac conducting tissue, mainly in SA node and AV node. If you discuss about the structure of this calcium channels, it has four subunits: alpha 1, alpha 2, a beta, and a delta subunit. This is a schematic representation of the calcium channels. So it has an alpha unit, alpha 1 unit, alpha 2 unit, beta, and delta unit. This alpha 1 subunit containing a central calcium conducting pore. So our calcium channel blockers, they goes and binds to the specific receptor site on the alpha 1 subunit, and they leads to the blockade of this calcium entry. So calcium entry is restricted here. Now we'll see the effects of this calcium channel blockade. So these blockers binds to specific sites on alpha 1 subunit of the calcium channel, and thus they decreases the transmembrane calcium current. So what all things will happen if the transmembrane calcium current decreases? First, it leads to relaxation in smooth muscle, so which leads to vasodilatation. That is a effects in vascular system. That means in vascular smooth muscles, and in cardiac muscles and SA node, AV node, what will happen? So in cardiac muscle it leads to decreased contractility, and in SA node the pacemaker rate will be decreased. That means heart rate is going to be decreased, and AV node the conduction velocity will be less. This is another picture which summarizes all the things we have discussed here. That means when the through the calcium channels calcium entry is taking place, this calcium binds to a intracellular component known as calmodulin. This calcium calmodulin complex goes and activate myosin light chain kinase, and it leads to the formation of active myosin light chain kinase. And there is a phosphorylation of myosin light chain kinase, and this phosphorylated myosin light chain goes and interact with actin, which leads to muscular contraction. This is the usual mechanism through when there is entry of calcium through the calcium channel. And we have our agents calcium channel blocker. When they block the calcium channel blockers, calcium channels. So this calcium entry is not taking place, so all these mechanism fail to take place, and there is no muscular contraction, and there will be smooth muscle or muscle relaxation. Now we will see the pharmacological actions of our calcium channel blockers. First, the effect in vascular smooth muscles. So these agents relaxes arterioles more than veins. When we discussed about nitrates, no, I have mentioned that nitrates dilates more veins than arterioles or arteries, but here it's a exact contrast. These calcium channel blockers, they dilate more arteries or arterioles than the veins, and this arteriolar dilatation will leads to decreased peripheral or systemic resistance, which leads to reduction of afterload. Reduction of afterload means cardiac workload is low or reduced, and it also has an action in the coronary blood flow also. It leads to reduction of the coronary vascular resistance, and which improves the coronary blood flow. And if you consider each agents here by the action on vascular smooth muscles, you can clearly see that there is some potency differences between each group of agents in terms of this vascular smooth muscle. So you should remember the fact that the dihydropyridine group of calcium channel blockers like amlodipine, nifedipine, these agents, they have a more potency, that means they have more action in vascular smooth muscle than our verapamil or diltiazem. That means these agent produces more vasodilatation than verapamil or diltiazem. So now we will see the pharmacological action in heart or cardiac myocyte. In normal cases, this calcium entered through the calcium channels binds to the troponin, and which leads to the interaction between actin and myosin, which leads to cardiac myocyte contraction. But when we apply this calcium channel blockers, it leads to failed entry of calcium through the calcium channel. So this actin myosin interaction is not going to take place, and there will be decreased muscular contraction, cardiac myocyte contraction. So that means there is a negative ionotropic effect. And the important feature in the case of dihydropyridine groups of calcium channel blockers are, when they dilates the peripheral vascular system or arterioles or coronary vascular system, there will be a baroreflex mediated increase in sympathetic tone. That means it's a compensatory mechanism. So that means when this dihydropyridine group, for example, it's an amlodipine is given, it dilates the arterioles, which leads to hypotension. So there will be a baroreflex mediated exaggerated sympathetic activity. This exaggerated sympathetic activity will lead to increased heart rate and cardiac contraction. That means when you administer amlodipine or nifedipine group of drugs, you should expect hypotension as well as increased heart rate. And now the pharmacological effects on SN node and AV nodes. The depolarization in SN node and AV node, they are depending upon the calcium mediated slow channels. So this AV conduction and SN node pacemaker ratio, and it's purely depending upon the recovery of this slow calcium mediated channel. Here our non-dihydropyridine groups like verapamil and diltiazem plays the role. So this agent blocks this slow calcium channel here. That means there decreases the calcium current through this slow channel, and which also leads to decrease in the rate of recovery of this calcium channel. So which leads to negative dromotropic and negative chronotropic effect. That means there is the rate of impulse production will be low, and as well as there is decreased conduction velocity. But our dihydropyridine groups drugs like nifedipine or amlodipine, they do not have any effect on the rate of recovery of these slow calcium channels. So they do not produce any negative chronotropic or dromotropic effect. Instead, because of the compensatory mechanism, they produces increase in the heart rate or force of contraction. This table shows the conclusion of the pharmacological effect we have discussed here. So nifedipine nifedipine group of drug, that means this dihydropyridine groups of calcium channel blockers have the maximum vascular smooth muscle relaxation, and as a result of that they produces a compensatory increase in myocardial contractility as well as increase in the heart rate. And other two groups, verapamil and diltiazem, even though they produces vascular smooth muscle, that the amount of smooth muscle relaxation is not up to this dihydropyridine groups of drug. And in addition to that, they produces a depression in the myocardial contractility as well as heart rate and AV conduction velocity. So there is a no compensatory increase in heart rate or force of contraction. They directly depresses all those things. Now we will see the effects of these calcium channel blockers on other systems, and they produces relaxation in the smooth muscle which are present in other system also, like gastrointestinal tract, genitourinary tract, bronchial smooth muscles, etc. And it is said that they interfere with the platelet aggregation in vitro, but we do not have more clinical relevance in a human being. And it is also said that it decreases the insulin release by this verapamil, but this also it's a theoretical thing, we do not have that much any clinical data for that. Now we'll see a few pharmacokinetic features of these calcium channel blockers. Most of the time these calcium channel blockers are given through oral routes, and among this amlodipine has the longest T-half, which is around 30 to 50 hours, and this nimodipine, it's the shortest T-half among this calcium channel blockers, it's only 1 to 2 hours. And we can apply certain drugs through the IV route also, which includes nifedipine, verapamil and diltiazem. Amlodipine being the longest acting agent in the calcium channel blockers, it produces less reflex tachycardia. That means it does not produce the peak concentration immediately in the blood, it presents for a long time. So there is no rapid change in the vascular mechanism, there is no rapid production of hypotension. So this compensatory mechanism is not getting started all on a sudden, and there is no reflex tachycardia immediately. And this isradipine, even though it's a dihydropyridine, it has an inhibitory effect on SI node. So this agent also does not produce any increase in the heart rate. And nimodipine, it's an important agent. This is the calcium channel blocker with high lipid solubility. That means this agent has the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. Only lipid soluble agents have the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. So what is the role of this nimodipine in after crossing the blood-brain barrier? So we can use this drug nimodipine in case of subarachnoid hemorrhage. So what is the role? In a patient with subarachnoid hemorrhage, so there will be a local vasospasm is there, that is following a hemorrhage the surrounding vessels may be vasospastic situation, and it's a protective mechanism. But this mechanism, this vasospasm, leads to ischemia in the surrounding area because of this vasospasm. So if we can administer nimodipine, which being lipid soluble, it crosses the blood brain barrier and it produces vasodilation, so the surrounding area can be protected. Now we'll see the adverse drug effects of these calcium channel blockers. These are the exaggerated response of its pharmacological action. That means excessive inhibition of the calcium influx, which results in severe bradycardia, AV block, cardiac arrest and heart failure. And they also leads to nausea, headache, dizziness, flushing and palpitation, hypotension, edema. It's seen commonly with dihydropyridine groups. These dihydropyridine groups, they produces systemic hypotension. So to compensate that, there will be increased sympathetic activity which manifests as palpitation, and sometimes there will be increased dilatation of precapillary arterioles which manifest as edema. And because of its the smooth muscle dilatation, relaxation in the intestine, there will be constipation, and this constipation is mostly manifest with verapamil. And there's a significant drug interaction when you administer calcium channel blocker, especially this verapamil or diltiazem group of calcium channel blocker with a beta blocker. Both these agents together leads to severe cardiac depression. That means these verapamil and diltiazem groups of agents, They have high preference of action in SN node as well as AV node in cardiac myocyte, and they produces negative chronotropic effect, negative inotropic effect, and negative dromotropic effect. That means the force of contraction, heart rate generation, all these are decreased. And beta blockers, they are also blocking the beta 1 receptors in the heart, so there will be additive effect. So both these agents together lead to severe cardiac depression, so it should be cautious while using this drug together in a patient. Now we will see the uses of these calcium channel blockers. It's include angina pectoris, hypertension, supraventricular tachyarrhythmias. That means by acting on the SA node or AV node, it decreases the impulse generation, so we can abort the tachyarrhythmias. And hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which it produces smooth muscle relaxation. And preterm labor. Preterm labor, there will uh, for the labor pain you need to have the uterine muscle should be contracted. So these calcium channel blockers leads to smooth muscle or uterine muscle relaxation, so you can prevent this preterm labor. And migraine as well as in Raynaud's disease. Raynaud's disease, it's due to vasospasm, so with the help of this calcium channel blockers we can avoid the vasospasm. Here our concern is angina and how these agents are beneficial in angina. These agents, by their depressant action on SA node as well as AV node and in myocardium, it produces reduction in cardiac contractility, decreases heart rate, decreases total peripheral resistance and BP, produces coronary vasodilatation due to its smooth muscle relaxation, and relieves the coronary spasm. These are the effects. And by the first three effects, the reduction of myocardial contractility, reduction of heart rate, and reduction of BP and total peripheral resistance, that means the cardiac workload is reduced. And coronary vasodilatation, it leads to increased coronary vascular flow, so increased oxygen supply. So both the action, reduction of workload as well as increased oxygen supply, these two actions are produced by these calcium channel blockers. And in variant angina, it's due to mainly coronary spasm. This is also relieved by our calcium channel blockers. Now we will see the situations where we use calcium channel blockers in angina. We use nitrates and beta blockers as the first line agents for management of the angina, and we use this calcium channel blockers in situations where inadequate response to the combination of beta blockers and nitrates, and if there is a adverse drug reaction to beta blocker, and if the patient with angina also having asthma, COPD and peripheral vascular disease, where we can't use beta blockers. And those with AV conduction disturbances, in AV conduction disturbances we should restrict the use of verapamil and diltiazem. We should use mainly dihydropyridines. And those with Prince metals angina. Coming to the next group of drugs effective in the management of angina is potassium channel openers. In our body we have different types of potassium channels, which includes voltage gated potassium channel, ATP activated potassium channel, calcium activated potassium channel, etc. So in a normal cells, this potassium is mainly an intracellular ion, and its concentration is high in intracellular side compared to extracellular side. If the potassium channel on that cell opens, it leads to an efflux of potassium ion along its concentration gradient. That means there is a movement of ion from inside the cell to outside, and this movement which leads to hyperpolarization of the cells and inhibition of the function. So if it takes place in a smooth muscle, for example vascular smooth muscles or visceral smooth muscles, it leads to relaxation of the smooth muscle. So we have three major agents in this potassium channel openers, which includes nicorandil, pinacidil and chromacolib. Now we will be discussing about this nicorandil. Nicorandil is a even though we will call this nicorandil as a potassium channel opener, it has dual mechanism of action. First, it opens the ATP sensitive potassium channel, so it leads to membrane hyperpolarization mainly in smooth muscles, and which leads to smooth muscle relaxation, so that is effective in vascular smooth muscle, which leads to vasodilatation. And another thing, that this nicorandil has a nitrate like moiety, so This nitrite like moiety can releases nitric oxide. Nitric oxide, just like the nitrate released nitric oxide, leads to vascular smooth muscle relaxation. Thus, this Nicorand leads to dilatation of both arterioles as well as veins, and it increases the coronary blood flow, and it does not have any direct effect on heart rate or contractility, but there may be compensatory increase in heart rate or contractility are possible because of the activation of baroreflex mediated sympathetic overactivity. It produces side effects like nausea, vomiting, aphthous ulcers, and headache, and we use commonly in a dose of 5 to 20 milligram twice daily. We do have certain new drugs for the management of angina pectoris, and that includes metabolic modulators as well as the agents which directly produces bradycardia. So we have trimetazidine and ranolazine as metabolic modulator and ivabradine as a directly acting bradycardic agent. Let's see how these metabolic modulators are effective in the management of angina. Their action is non-hemodynamic. That means they do not produce any hemodynamic effect in the cardiovascular system. Instead, they act by inhibiting the metabolic changes in the myocardium following an ischemia. They are known as pFOX inhibitor. That means they inhibits the fatty acid oxidation pathway. That means fatty acid oxidation pathway inhibitors. So following an ischemic event or angina, the myocardium tend to use these fatty acids for their energy production. That means in a normal heart it mostly use carbohydrate or glucose energy for the energy production, but in case of an ischemic heart, ischemic myocardium, it tends to use more fatty acid for the energy production. But for this energy production from the fatty acid, it requires more oxygen. That means its oxygen demand is getting high. And if you imagine, if you have an agent which inhibit the metabolism of these fatty acids, so we can cut down this oxygen demand. Then at that time the myocardium have to use glucose for the energy production, for which only low oxygen demand is needed. So we can cut down the oxygen demand by blocking this fatty acid metabolism. So here comes the role of these metabolic modulators. We have agents like trimetazidine or ranolazine. They cut down these certain important enzymes in the pathway of this fatty acid metabolism. For example, we have for example, these agents blocks one of the enzyme known as long chain 3-ketoacyl CoA thiolase, and thus the fatty acid metabolism is blocked, and and there will be a shift back of substrate from fatty acid to glucose. Thus oxygen demand is decreased. So few points about this trimetazidine. As we discussed already, this is a fatty acid oxidation pathway inhibitor. It's well absorbed through the oral route and excreted unchanged in urine, and we use in a dose of 20 milligram TID with a T-half of 6 hours. And the adverse effects associated with this trimetazidine includes muscle cramps, dizziness, fatigue, and very rarely a reversible Parkinsonian-like features in elderly patients. So most commonly used for as a angina as an add-on medication along with other drugs, and it is said to be useful in visual disturbances, tinnitus, and Meniere's disease. But we do not have much conclusive data on its success in these conditions like visual disturbances or Meniere's disease. Now we have the second agent. It's ranolazine. It's known as a congener of trimetazidine. Even though it's also a fatty acid oxidation inhibitor, its major mechanism is decreases the myocardial contractility by inhibiting the late sodium current, which facilitate calcium entry. That means in ischemic myocardium there is a late sodium current, and this late sodium current indirectly increases the calcium concentration in the myocardium with the help of an exchanger known as sodium calcium exchanger. This exchanger exchanges sodium for calcium, and this calcium is entered into the myocardium, which leads to increased myocardial contractility. But this ranolazine inhibits this late sodium current, so there will not be the associated increase in the calcium in the myocardium, so the contractility will be low. It's used in a dose of 0.5 to 1 milligram and with a t-half of 7 hours. It produces certain side effects like dizziness, constipation, dyspnea, and most importantly, prolonged QT interval. And the last agent among this is ivabradine. It's a directly acting bradycardic agent. That means it produces bradycardia. It's, it decreases the heart rate by inhibiting IF current in the SI node. That means in the sinoatrial node there is specific some F channels or funny channels. They open during the early part of the phase 4 depolarization of cardiac action potential, and because of their opening there occurs an inward current, IF current. So this IF current determines the slope of the phase 4 depolarization in a cardiac action potential. So by selectively blocking this current, this ivabradine produces the reduction in the heart rate. Its efficacy is similar to calcium channel blockers or beta blockers, and but it does not have action on smooth muscle on comparing to that of calcium channel blockers or beta blockers. And now we'll see certain other groups of drugs which can be useful for the management of ischemia, which includes antiplatelet drugs like aspirin, clopidogrel, apixaban, tirofiban, eptifibatide. This use of aspirin and all, they reduces the incidence of myocardial infarction and death in a patients with unstable angina. And we can use this statins as lipid lowering agent to reduce the atherosclerotic plaque formation. And there was another agent, it's known as dipyridamole. it it was used as a coronary artery dilator but not using nowadays, but it has an interesting associated feature. It's known as coronary steal phenomenon. That means it produces dilatation in the arteries, not only in the ischemic areas, in other areas too. That means uh, because of this dilatation in non-ischemic area, their blood flow to the non-ischemic areas is increasing. So the ischemic area is already suffered due to low blood flow, and now it's further worsens because all the blood is going to other non-ischemic area. That is what is known as coronary steal phenomenon. And that finishes the class about anti-anginal drugs. So we have discussed about nitrates, beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, potassium channel openers, then fatty acid oxidation inhibitors, and those agents which acts directly to produce bradycardia.